should have known the night would end badly when the man in the corner booth started speaking Arabic into his phone. Not because he was speaking Arabic. I'd grown up hearing it in my grandmother's kitchen, her voice soft and melodic as she taught me the language of her homeland. No, it was the way he spoke it. Sharp, commanding. Each word a bullet fired across the restaurant's dim interior. I was 3 hours into my shift at Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago, where the wine cost more than my rent, and the clientele wore watches that could fund a small country. My feet ached in my sensible flats, and I had exactly $47 in tips tucked into my apron. Not enough, never enough, but it would have to do. The man had arrived an hour ago with 4 others, all of them dressed in expensive suits that screamed money and danger in equal measure. They'd taken the private booth in the back, the one with velvet curtains that could be drawn for privacy, the one we saved for people who didn't want to be seen. My manager, Tony, had pulled me aside with nervous eyes. Table 12, be polite, be quick, don't linger. I'd served powerful men before, politicians, celebrities, the occasional minor crime boss who thought tipping well bought silence. But this man was different. He sat at the head of the table like a king surveying his kingdom, dark hair perfectly styled, jaw sharp enough to cut glass. Even from across the room, I could feel the weight of his presence, the way the air seemed to compress around him, making it harder to breathe. His eyes were the color of midnight, cold and assessing, missing nothing. I delivered their appetizers without incident, my Arabic grandmother's lessons echoing in my mind as I caught fragments of their conversation. Business talk. Territory. Someone named Victor who'd overstepped. Then the call came. His phone had buzzed, and the temperature in the booth dropped 10 degrees. He'd answered in Arabic, his voice low at first, then rising with barely contained fury. La, he snapped, his accent flawless, born from native tongue rather than textbook learning. Kot lek, al-shan tadhab ila al-mina al-janubi, laysa ash-shimali. No, I told you the shipment goes to the south dock, not the north. The other men at his table had gone completely still, like prey animals sensing a predator's rage. Hal anta ama? Hal turid takun mubarak? Sa'aktulak binafsi? Are you stupid? Do you want to be blessed? I'll kill you myself. My tray trembled slightly in my hands as I approached to clear their plates. I knew I should turn around, come back later, but Tony was watching from the bar, making hurry-up gestures. The man's voice rose another octave, sharp enough to cut. Ana la ataja darak. Ataj ataba akli awamiri. I don't need your excuses. I need you to follow my orders. He slammed his fist on the table, making the wine glasses jump. His men flinched, but stayed silent. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. Ida fashalta mara ukra, sa ursaluk ila ilatak fichita, fahimta? If you fail again, I'll send you back to your family in pieces. Understood? The phone clattered onto the table. He ran a hand through his dark hair, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. That's when I made my mistake. I'd cleared 3 plates in silence, but when I reached for his untouched wine glass, my hand trembled. The glass tipped, spilling Chianti across the white tablecloth in a crimson bloom. Time seemed to slow. His head snapped toward me, those midnight eyes locking onto mine with the force of a physical blow. The fury that had been directed at the phone now focused entirely on me, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Mutahamika, he snarled. You're idiot. The insult hung in the air between us, sharp and cutting. My grandmother's voice whispered in my memory. Never let a man think you're weak, Habibti. Especially, not a powerful one. Something in me, something stupid and defiant and fed up with being invisible, snapped. I straightened my spine, met his gaze directly, and answered in perfect, fluent Arabic. Ana lastu mutahamika, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Wa anta, lasta malik, litata hadath mai bihada ash-shakal. I am not your idiot, and you are not a king to speak to me that way. The entire table went silent. His eyes widened fractionally the first crack in his cold composure. One of his men actually gasped. But I wasn't finished. The words poured out before I could stop them. My grandmother's lessons, and my own exhaustion combining into something reckless. Yadhak ala rijala dafminaka abra al-hatif. I continued, tilting my head slightly. Hadha la yajaluka kawiyan. Yajaluka jaban. You yell at weaker men over the phone? That doesn't make you strong. It makes you a coward. The word jaban, coward, seemed to echo in the suddenly silent restaurant. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved, Nobody breathed. Then he stood. He was taller than I'd realized, well over 6 feet, and the way he moved reminded me of a panther, all coiled muscle and predatory grace. He stepped around the table slowly, deliberately, until he stood directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar, and smoke, and something darker, more dangerous. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Ma ismuki?" he asked softly, his voice like velvet over steel. "What is your name?" Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen in place, trapped in his gaze like a moth pinned to a board. "Layla," I whispered, and hated how breathless I sounded. "Layla," he repeated, tasting my name on his tongue. Then, still in Arabic, low enough that only I could hear, "You speak my language, call me a coward in front of my men, and tremble when I come near. Which is the real you, Layla? The brave one, or the frightened one?" "Both," I answered honestly. "Always both." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. His gaze dropped to my lips for a fraction of a second before returning to my face. "Intriguing," he murmured. Then, louder, in English with only the faintest accent, "Bring me another glass. And don't spill it." He returned to his seat, leaving me standing there with my heart hammering against my ribs. I should have gone straight to Tony and quit on the spot. Should have grabbed my purse and run as far from this man as possible. Instead, I brought him another glass of wine. My hands perfectly steady this time. When I set it down, he caught my wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop me. His skin was warm, his grip commanding. "Ma asnak alakhir?" he asked. "What's your last name?" "Why?" I managed. His thumb brushed once across my pulse point, feeling my heartbeat betray me. "Because, Layla, anyone brave enough to call me a coward to my face is either very stupid or very dangerous." His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. "And I don't think you're stupid." He released me, and I stepped back, my wrist burning where he'd touched me. As I walked away on shaking legs, I heard one of his men lean in and whisper urgently in Italian. "Boss, you can't let her." "Silence," he commanded, his eyes never leaving me as I disappeared through the kitchen doors. I didn't know it then, but that single moment, that one act of defiance had just changed my life forever. Because the man I'd called a coward wasn't just wealthy or powerful. He was Dante Marchetti, the untouchable king of Chicago's underworld, a man who controlled everything from the docks to City Hall, who could make people disappear with a phone call. And I had just called him a coward in front of his inner circle. That night, when I finally left work at midnight, I found a black envelope tucked under my car's windshield wiper. Inside, in elegant script, was a note in Arabic, "Al-Shuja'a tanamu fi qubur," the brave sleep in graves, and below it, a phone number, no signature, none needed. My hands shook as I got into my car, the envelope burning in my pocket like a live coal. I should have thrown it away, should have driven straight to the police. Instead, I drove home clutching it like a lifeline, knowing somehow that my ordinary life had just ended, and something infinitely more dangerous had begun. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, Dante Marchetti, standing so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body, his midnight eyes boring into mine like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. The brave sleep in graves. The note sat on my nightstand, mocking me in the darkness of my studio apartment. I'd Googled him the moment I got home, my laptop casting a blue glow across my face as article after article loaded. Dante Marchetti, Chicago's most dangerous man, federal investigation stalls. Marchetti remains untouchable, 3 rival families disappear. After challenging Marchetti territory, the pictures showed him at charity galas, shaking hands with politicians, cutting ribbons at hospital openings. In every photo, he wore that same cold expression, like he was barely tolerating the necessity of appearing civilized. One article quoted an anonymous FBI source. "Marchetti runs Chicago like a corporation. Clean books, legitimate fronts, and anyone who knows the truth is either on his payroll or in a grave. He's 3rd-generation mob royalty, but he's made the family more powerful than his father and grandfather combined. He's a ghost, we know what he is, but we can't prove it." I'd slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. What had I done? At 3 a.m., I finally gave up on sleep and made tea, my grandmother's old copper kettle whistling softly in the quiet. She'd died 2 years ago, leaving me alone in a city that suddenly felt too big and too dangerous. If she were still alive, what would she tell me? Would she be proud that I'd stood up to a powerful man? or furious that I'd been so reckless. Habibti, I could almost hear her saying. Courage without wisdom is just another word for foolishness. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Tony sounded relieved. Listen, Layla, he said, his voice tight. About last night. Maybe take a few days. I'll put you back on the schedule next week. Tony, what? Just take the days. He interrupted. Paid. Consider it a bonus. He hung up before I could argue. I stared at my phone, a cold knot forming in my stomach. He was scared. Of course he was. Dante Marchetti had sat in his restaurant, and I'd insulted him in front of his men. God, I was an idiot. I spent the day cleaning my apartment obsessively, trying to burn off the anxiety crawling under my skin. Scrubbing counters, organizing my tiny closet, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from spiraling. The note stayed on my nightstand. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I refused to call the number. What would I even say? Sorry I called you a coward. Please don't have me killed? At 6 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I froze mid-step, a plate still soapy in my hands. Another knock, firmer this time. I set the plate down carefully and moved to the door, standing on tiptoe to look through the peephole. A man in a black suit stood in the hallway. He was massive, at least 6'4", with shoulders that barely fit through a standard doorframe. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were alert, constantly scanning. Miss Hassan, he called through the door. Mr. Marchetti requests your presence. My blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about, I called back, hating how my voice shook. Miss Hassan, please don't make this difficult. His tone was professional, almost bored. Mr. Marchetti simply wishes to speak with you. You're not in any danger. Then why did he send Muscle to my apartment? A pause. Then, incredibly, I heard a soft chuckle. I'm not Muscle, Miss Hassan. I'm transportation. The Muscle is in the car downstairs, in case you decide to be. Uncooperative. Jesus Christ. And if I refuse? Then I've been instructed to wait in the hallway until you change your mind. I have a very comfortable chair in the car. I can wait all night. I pressed my forehead against the door, my mind racing. What were my options? Call the police? And tell them what, that a polite man was standing in my hallway making vague threats? That I'd insulted a mob boss and now he wanted to talk? They'd laugh me out of the station. Miss Hassan, the man continued, Mr. Marchetti gave me a message for you. He said to tell you, in Arabic, Al-Jaban la yadu ila hadrati. A coward doesn't invite you into his presence. Damn him. Damn him and his arrogance and the way he'd somehow turned my own words against me, making his summons sound like a challenge instead of a threat. I looked down at myself, old jeans, a faded Northwestern t-shirt, my hair in a messy bun. Not exactly appropriate attire for meeting a crime lord. I need to change, I said through the door. Of course. I'll wait. I stepped back from the door, my heart pounding. This was insane. I should climb out my fire escape, should run, but where would I run? If Dante Marchetti wanted to find me, he would find me. And running would only make me look weak, would only confirm whatever test this was. The brave sleep in graves, the note had said. But he'd also said he didn't think I was stupid. Maybe brave and smart wasn't a contradiction. Maybe it was about choosing your battles carefully. Or maybe I was just trying to rationalize walking directly into the lion's den. I changed quickly into black slacks and a cream blouse, the closest thing I had to professional. Grabbed my phone and keys. Thought about texting someone, anyone, to tell them where I was going. But who? I had no family left in Chicago. My friends from college had mostly moved away after graduation. I'd been so focused on paying bills and surviving that I'd let relationships atrophy like unused muscles. God, if something happened to me, how long would it take for anyone to notice? I opened the door. The man smiled, actually smiled, warm and genuine. Miss Hassan, I'm Marco. Shall we? He offered his arm like we were heading to a dinner party instead of an ominous summons from the city's most dangerous man. I ignored his arm and stepped into the hallway, locking my door with fingers that only trembled slightly. After you, I said. His smile widened. Of course. The black SUV parked outside my building looked like something the Secret Service would drive, windows tinted so dark they were nearly opaque, chrome gleaming under the streetlights. A second man in an identical suit stood by the rear door. Marco opened it for me. It's about a 30-minute drive. Where are we going? Mr. Marchetti's estate, North Shore. Of course. The mob boss had an estate. I climbed into the SUV, the leather seats soft as butter beneath me. Marco slid in beside me while the other man took the driver's seat. A third man I hadn't noticed sat in the passenger seat, and he turned to look at me with cool assessment. We were moving before I could second-guess my decision. The city slid past the windows, my city, the place I'd lived my whole life, suddenly feeling foreign and dangerous. We left downtown, heading north along Lakeshore Drive, the dark water of Lake Michigan stretching endlessly to our right. "Miss Hassan," Marco said conversationally. "Mr. Marchetti asked me to assure you that this is merely a conversation. You'll be returned home safely afterward." Merely a conversation that required 3 men and an armored vehicle. Marco's lips twitched. Mr. Marchetti is a cautious man. He has many enemies, and he thinks I'm one of them. On the contrary, Marco's expression grew more serious. He thinks you're interesting. That's far more dangerous. A chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? It means, Miss Hassan, that in the 10 years I've worked for Mr. Marchetti, I've never seen him show interest in anyone the way he's shown interest in you. He met my eyes directly. I don't know if that should make you feel fortunate or terrified. Both, I whispered. Always both. Marco's eyebrows rose. You told him the same thing last night, didn't you? At the restaurant. I nodded mutely. Interesting, he murmured, echoing his boss's word from the night before. Then he turned to look out the window, effectively ending the conversation. We drove in silence through increasingly affluent neighborhoods, the houses growing larger, the lawns more expansive. Finally, we turned onto a private road lined with ancient oak trees, their branches forming a tunnel overhead. The estate revealed itself gradually, first a high stone wall, then massive iron gates that swung open at our approach, then a long driveway that curved through manicured gardens. The house at the end was less a house and more a mansion, 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within like a jewel box. It looked like something out of a movie, beautiful and imposing in equal measure. We pulled up to the front entrance, where wide stone steps led to ornate double doors. Marco opened my door. This way, please. My legs felt unsteady as I climbed out, my eyes taking in the sheer scale of the place. How much money did it take to own something like this? How much power? The doors opened before we reached them, held by a gray-haired man in a butler's uniform who looked like he'd stepped out of a British period drama. "Miss Hassan," he said with a slight bow. "Mr. Marchetti is waiting in his study. Please, follow me." The interior was even more stunning than the exterior: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that looked expensive enough to be museum pieces. Every detail spoke of wealth accumulated over generations, of power so entrenched it felt permanent. We climbed a sweeping staircase to the 2nd floor, walked down a hallway lined with portraits of stern-faced men who all shared Dante's sharp features, and finally stopped before a heavy wooden door. The butler knocked once, softly. "Idkul, enter." The voice sent electricity down my spine. The butler opened the door and gestured for me to enter. I stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind me with terrible finality. The study was beautiful in a way that felt almost dangerous: floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, lined with leather-bound volumes, a marble fireplace where flames danced and crackled, Persian rugs that probably cost more than my car. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the dark grounds, Lake Michigan a vast emptiness beyond. Dante Marchetti stood by those windows, a glass of amber liquid in one hand, his back to me. He'd changed from his suit into more casual clothes, dark slacks, and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. Somehow, this version of him felt even more dangerous than the cold kingpin from the restaurant. "Sit," he said, without turning around. I remained standing. "Why am I here?" He turned then, and the firelight played across his features, making him look almost otherworldly. Those midnight eyes found mine, and I felt that same electric current from last night, the sense that I was being seen in a way I'd never been seen before. "You didn't call," he said simply. "You sent a death threat. Most people don't respond to those with phone calls." His lips curved slightly. "It wasn't a death threat. It was a truth." "The brave sleep in graves?" I crossed my arms. "That sounds pretty threatening." "Does it?" He moved toward me with that same predatory grace, each step measured and deliberate. I meant it as a compliment. "You were brave. Foolishly so. I wanted you to understand the consequences of bravery in my world." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw. He looked tired, I realized. Tired and somehow more human than the ice-cold figure from the restaurant. So you had your men drag me to your mansion to what, teach me a lesson about mortality? My men didn't drag you anywhere. You came willingly. Damn him for being right. Why am I here, Dante? I used his first name deliberately, watching his eyes flicker with something that might have been surprise or approval. He gestured to one of the leather chairs near the fireplace. Sit with me, please. The please surprised me enough that I complied, sinking into the chair. He took the one opposite, close enough that our knees almost touched, and for a long moment he simply looked at me. You speak perfect Arabic, he finally said. Where did you learn? My grandmother. She was from Lebanon. She raised me after my parents died. How old were you? 6. He nodded slowly. I was 8 when my mother died. My father raised me in this house, taught me the family business. His gaze drifted to the fire. Sometimes I think the young orphans are the most dangerous people in the world. We have nothing left to lose. The unexpected vulnerability in his voice made my breath catch. This wasn't the cold kingpin. This was someone else, someone real beneath the armor. I'm sorry, I said softly. About your mother. And I'm sorry about your grandmother. When did she pass? 2 years ago. Do you have other family? I shook my head. Not in Chicago. Some distant cousins back in Lebanon. But we've never met. So, you're alone in this city. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in that cold facade, revealing something almost tender beneath. I know what that feels like. To be surrounded by people and still feel utterly alone. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the firelight casting shadows across his face. Do you know why I had you brought here tonight, Layla? My name on his lips sent an unwelcome shiver through me. To punish me for insulting you? No. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and caught a strand of my hair that had escaped my bun. He rubbed it between his fingers, his touch impossibly gentle. I brought you here because in 10 years of ruling this city, no one has ever looked me in the eye and called me a coward. Maybe they should have. He smiled, then a real smile that transformed his entire face, making him look younger, almost boyish. Maybe they should have, he agreed. Do you know what my life is like, Layla? Everyone around me wants something. Loyalty bought with money or fear. Respect given because they have no choice. Enemies pretending to be friends. Friends who would become enemies if the price was right. He released my hair, his hand dropping to rest on the arm of his chair, close enough that I could feel the heat of his skin. And then you, a waitress I've never met, stand there, shaking with fear but refusing to back down, and tell me the truth in a language you think I'll understand, not because you want something from me, not because you're trying to manipulate me, but because I was being an asshole and you were brave enough to say it. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my pulse race. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How intoxicating? I could have gotten myself killed, I whispered. Yes. His hand moved to cover mine on the armrest, warm and solid. That's what made it brave. And that's why you're dangerous, Layla Hassan. Because I don't know what to do with someone like you. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. Such a small gesture, but it felt like a brand. I should let you go, he continued, his voice dropping lower. Send you home and forget last night ever happened. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. But I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me. Like I was just a man, not a king. Like you saw past all of this. He gestured around the study, to whatever is underneath. He stood abruptly, pulling me to my feet with him. We were close now, so close I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. His free hand came up to cup my jaw, his touch surprisingly gentle. Tell me to let you go, he said. Tell me you want nothing to do with me or my world. I'll have Marco drive you home, and you'll never see me again. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was my chance. My opportunity to walk away from whatever darkness he represented. To return to my small, safe life. But when I opened my mouth, different words came out. What if I don't want to go? His eyes darkened, pupils dilating. Then you're more foolish than I thought. Or braver, I countered, echoing his own words. Brave people sleep in graves, Layla. Then I guess I'm not tired yet. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he leaned down, slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. His lips hovered just above mine, so close I could feel his breath. Last chance, he whispered. "Walk away now, before this becomes something neither of us can take back." But I'd never been good at taking the safe path. My grandmother had always said I had too much of my father's stubborn streak, my mother's reckless heart. I closed the distance between us. The kiss started gentle, tentative, almost questioning. His lips were softer than I'd expected, moving against mine with a restraint that felt like a tightly leashed storm. His hand slid from my jaw into my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss. Then something broke loose. He pulled me against him, his other arm wrapping around my waist, and the kiss turned fierce, consuming. I gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, his tongue sliding against mine in a rhythm that made my knees weaken. This wasn't just a kiss. It was a claiming, a promise, a warning. My hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. He was solid muscle and barely restrained power, and I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt alive for the first time in years. He broke the kiss, but didn't release me, his forehead resting against mine as we both struggled to catch our breath. "Layla," he said, my name rough with desire, "you need to understand what you're getting into. My world, it's not safe. It's not kind. People around me die. People I care about become targets." "Then maybe you should let me go," I said, but made no move to pull away. "I should." His arms tightened around me. "But I won't. God help us both, I won't." His phone buzzed in his pocket, shattering the moment. He swore softly in Italian, then Arabic, and finally released me to check it. His expression went cold in an instant, all traces of vulnerability vanishing behind that icy mask. "What is it?" I asked. He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. Not anger, fear. "Your apartment building," he said quietly. "It's on fire." The drive back to the city felt like traveling through a nightmare. I sat rigid in the SUV's back seat, Dante beside me, his hand covering mine in a grip that was probably meant to be comforting but felt more like a restraint. Like he was afraid I might do something reckless. He'd barely spoken since getting the call, just made a series of rapid-fire phone calls in Italian and Arabic, his voice sharp with command. Marco drove faster than he had before, weaving through late-night traffic with the kind of precision that came from practice. "It could be a coincidence," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Dante's jaw clenched. "It's not. You don't know that." He turned to look at me, and the raw fury in his eyes made me flinch. "Someone knew you were at my estate tonight. Someone knew you were important enough to me that hurting you would send a message." "Important?" The word came out strangled. "I met you yesterday, and yet here you are." His thumb traced circles on my palm, an unconscious gesture, I thought, like he needed the physical contact to ground himself. In my car, having been in my home, having kissed me in my study, the memory of that kiss felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. A before time, when the most dangerous thing in my world was insulting a mob boss. "Not my things," I whispered. "My grandmother's things. Her kettle, her photos, we'll replace them." "You can't replace memories." He went silent, his expression softening slightly. "No, I can't. I'm sorry. Sorry." The word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he didn't use it often. Maybe he didn't. We turned onto my street, and I saw the glow before I saw the flames, an orange-red light against the night sky that turned my stomach to ice. 3 fire trucks crowded the narrow street, hoses spraying water onto my building's upper floors. Smoke poured from windows, thick and black. Neighbors stood on the sidewalk in pajamas and hastily thrown on coats, watching their homes burn. The SUV barely stopped before I was out of it, running toward the building. "Layla!" Dante's voice cracked behind me, but I didn't stop. A firefighter caught me before I could get too close, his hands firm on my shoulders. "Ma'am, you need to stay back. I live there. 4th floor, apartment, 4C. Ma'am, the 4th floor is fully engulfed." "I'm sorry, but was anyone inside?" Dante's voice cut through my panic. He'd appeared beside me, his presence making the firefighter straighten slightly. "Any casualties?" "No, sir, thank God. Building was mostly empty Saturday night. Lots of folks out. We've accounted for everyone." I sagged against Dante's side, relief and loss warring in my chest. No one was dead, but everything I owned, every memory of my grandmother, every piece of my small life. "Where did it start?" Dante asked, his voice casual but his body tense as a coiled spring. "Too early to say for sure, but looks like 4C. "That's your apartment, ma'am?" Ice flooded my veins. Yes, I whispered. The firefighter's expression turned sympathetic. I'm real sorry. Looks like it might have been electrical. But the fire marshal will investigate. You have somewhere to stay tonight? Dante's arm wrapped around my waist, possessive and protective. She does. The firefighter nodded and moved away, shouting orders to his crew. I stared at the flames devouring my home, my life, everything that had been mine. My grandmother's copper kettle would be melting right now, her photos curling and blackening, her voice lost forever to the fire. It wasn't electrical, Dante said quietly, his lips close to my ear. It was deliberately set, started in your apartment and spread upward. How do you know? Because I've ordered enough buildings burned to know what intentional fire looks like. He turned me to face him, his hands cupping my face. Layla, listen to me. This wasn't random. Someone is sending me a message. What message? His eyes were black in the firelight, his expression carved from stone. That they know about you, that they can reach you, that if I don't back off from whatever they think I'm planning, you're the price. The full weight of what he was saying hit me. This is because of you. Because I was at your house. Because I kissed you and someone saw you leave in my car. His hands tightened slightly. Because in my world, showing interest in someone is the same as painting a target on their back. Then let me go. The words came out automatically, but even as I said them, I knew they were meaningless. Whoever did this, tell them I don't matter to you. Tell them it was a mistake. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's too late for that. They saw Marco bring you to me. They saw how long you stayed. They know. Know what? He looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it over the chaos around us. That you matter. Before I could process that, another SUV pulled up identical to the one we'd arrived in. The door opened and two men got out, one of them carrying a tablet. Boss, the man with the tablet said, handing it to Dante. Surveillance footage from the neighbor's security camera. Dante took the tablet, angling it so I could see. The footage showed my apartment building's front entrance, time-stamped 2 hours ago. A man in dark clothes and a baseball cap approached my door. He glanced around once, then used a key. How did he have a key? To let himself in. 17 minutes later, he walked out calmly, hands in his pockets. 15 minutes after that, smoke began curling from my 4th-floor window. Can you see his face? I asked. Dante's finger swiped across the screen, zooming in on a single frame, where the man had looked up at the camera. The image was grainy but clear enough to see his features angular, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Maxim Volkov, Dante said, his voice dropping to something deadly. He works for Viktor Antonov. Who's Viktor Antonov? The head of the Russian syndicate in Chicago. We've been negotiating territory for the past 6 months. He handed the tablet back to his man. Apparently, Victor thinks burning down the apartment of a woman I'm interested in will convince me to be more agreeable. The casual way, he said, a woman I'm interested in, made my breath catch. But this wasn't the time. What are you going to do? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. The cold calculation of a kingpin versus something more human, more vulnerable. I'm going to keep you safe, he said finally. And then I'm going to make Victor regret this decision for the rest of his very short life. Dante, you're coming with me. Back to the estate. You'll stay there, under guard, until this is resolved. I can't just... Layla. He gripped my shoulders, forcing me to meet his eyes. Your building is burning. You have no home, no possessions, nowhere safe to go. Victor knows what you look like, knows your name, and has already tried to kill you once tonight. This isn't a request. I could go to a hotel. I could leave the city. He'd find you. His hand slid down my arms, his touch impossibly gentle despite the steel in his voice. His reach extends to every hotel, every airport, every bus station. The only place you're truly safe is with me, surrounded by my men. The men who are loyal because you pay them? The men who are loyal because I've spent 10 years proving I'm worth following. Because I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. His eyes blazed. Aren't you? You were in my study an hour ago, kissing me like you wanted to be consumed. You looked at me like I was human, not a monster. You made me feel something I haven't felt in years. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Maybe you're not mine yet, but you will be. Because I'm not letting you go. I should have been terrified, should have slapped him and run and never looked back. Instead, I felt a dangerous thrill race through my veins. What if I say no? Then I'll have Marco carry you to the car and make sure you don't escape from the estate. He tilted his head slightly. But you won't say no, because you're smart enough to know that I'm the only thing standing between you and a Russian bullet. He was right, and I hated him for it. Fine, I said, but this is temporary. Just until you resolve things with Victor. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so predatory. Of course, temporary. But the way he said it made it sound like a lie. As Marco opened the SUV door, I took one last look at my burning building. Somewhere in those flames were the last physical pieces of my grandmother, the last connections to my parents, the last evidence that I'd had a life before this moment. Now I had nothing except a mob boss's protection, and the growing certainty that I'd just stepped into a world I'd never escape. The estate felt different at night. Dante led me through hallways I hadn't seen on my first visit, Marco trailing behind us like a well-dressed shadow. We climbed to the 3rd floor, down a corridor lined with closed doors, until Dante stopped at the last one. "This is you," he said, pushing it open. The bedroom was larger than my entire apartment had been. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in navy silk. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the dark grounds and the lake beyond. A fireplace already crackled with flames. Someone had prepared the room for me. "The closet has clothes," Dante continued, his tone businesslike, like he was giving a hotel tour instead of imprisoning me in his mansion. "My sister's things, from when she used to visit. You're about the same size. Bathroom is through there. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed. Dial 0 for the house staff." I stepped into the room, my arms wrapped around myself. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. I was staying in a mob boss's house, in his dead sister's clothes, because someone had tried to kill me. "Your sister?" I asked, latching onto the one detail that felt human. His expression shuddered. "She died 5 years ago. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was brilliant and reckless and too good for this world." He looked around the room, something vulnerable flickering across his features. "She was the only person who ever told me the truth, who saw past all the power and money and blood to whatever was underneath. Like you see me," his eyes said. "How did she?" I started, then stopped. "I'm sorry. That's not my business." "Cancer," he said flatly. "Leukemia. I controlled half the city, had politicians and judges in my pocket, and I couldn't save my baby sister from her own traitorous cells." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out power has limits after all." I moved toward him without thinking, my hand finding his. "Dante." He looked down at our joined hands, his thumb brushing across my knuckles. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said I needed someone who wasn't afraid to call me on my shit." "She sounds wonderful." She was. He was quiet for a moment, then seemed to shake himself. "Get some rest. We'll figure out next steps in the morning." He turned to leave, but I didn't release his hand. "Stay," I heard myself say. He froze, his back to me. "Layla, I don't want to be alone tonight. Not after." My voice cracked. "Please." He turned slowly, and the raw need in his eyes matched something in my own chest. "If I stay, I'm not sleeping on the floor or in a chair, and I'm not sure I can be in that bed with you and keep my hands to myself." My heart raced, but I didn't let go of his hand. "Maybe I don't want you to. You've had a traumatic night. You're vulnerable. I won't take advantage of that. What if I want you to?" His jaw clenched. "Don't say things you don't mean." I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "My building is gone. My things are gone. My grandmother's memory is burning to ash as we speak. The only thing I have left is this moment. Right now, with you." I looked up at him, letting him see everything I was feeling. "So no, I'm not thinking clearly. And yes, I'm vulnerable, but I'm also alive, and I want to feel something other than fear and loss. Layla." I rose onto my toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat, he remained rigid, unresponsive. Then, with a sound that was half groan, half surrender, he wrapped his arms around me and kissed me back. This kiss was different from the one in his study. That had been exploring, tentative. This was desperate, consuming. His hands fisted in my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss as he walked me backward toward the bed. My legs hit the mattress and I fell back, pulling him with me. He caught himself on his forearms, his weight pressing me into the silk sheets. "Last chance," he breathed against my lips. "Tell me to stop." Don't you dare. Something in him snapped. He claimed my mouth again, his kiss turning fierce, possessive. His hand slid under my blouse, calloused fingers skating across my skin, and I arched into his touch. You're so soft, he murmured, trailing kisses down my jaw, my neck. So breakable. I'm not fragile. He pulled back enough to look at me, his pupils blown wide with desire. No, you're not. You're steel wrapped in silk. His hand cupped my face. You're magnificent. I pulled him down for another kiss, my fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. He helped me, shrugging it off and tossing it aside. In the firelight, his body was a masterpiece, defined muscles, olive skin, a few scars that spoke of a violent life. I traced one scar along his ribs. How did this happen? Knife fight. I was 19 and stupid. He caught my hand, kissing my palm. I don't want to talk about my scars right now. What do you want to talk about? His eyes darkened. I don't want to talk at all. He made good on that promise for the next hour. Afterward, we lay tangled in the silk sheets, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my spine. The fire had burned down to embers, casting the room in shadows. I should go, he said, but made no move to leave. Stay. If I stay, my men will know. By morning, everyone in my organization will know you slept in my bed. And that's bad? He was quiet for a long moment. It makes you a bigger target. It tells everyone you matter to me. Do I? The question came out smaller than I'd intended. Matter to you? He shifted, rolling onto his side so he could look at me. His hand cupped my face with a tenderness that made my chest ache. I've killed men for less than looking at me wrong, he said quietly. I've destroyed businesses, ended bloodlines, burned entire territories to ash. I don't feel remorse. I don't lose sleep over the bodies I've left behind. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. But when I got that call tonight, when I thought for one moment that you might have been in that apartment when it burned, his jaw clenched. I felt something I haven't felt since my sister died. Terror. My breath caught. So yes, Layla, you matter. Far more than is safe for either of us. I kissed him, soft and slow, trying to convey everything I couldn't put into words. When I pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Stay, I whispered again. This time he didn't argue. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of angry voices downstairs. Dante was already awake, standing by the window fully dressed in fresh clothes, black slacks, and a crisp white shirt. He looked every inch the powerful kingpin again, all traces of last night's vulnerability buried beneath cold authority. What's happening? I asked, sitting up and pulling the sheet around myself. He turned, and something softened in his expression when he saw me. Victor sent a message. He wants to meet. That's good, right? You can negotiate. He sent his message in a box. Dante's voice was flat, emotionless, containing Maxim Volkov's head. I went cold. The man who burned down my building? Yes. Victor claims it was unauthorized, that Maxim acted without orders. He's offering him up as an apology. Dante's laugh was bitter. Bullshit. This is Victor's way of showing strength while appearing reasonable. He's saying, look how easily I dispose of my own men. Imagine what I'll do to my enemies. What are you going to do? He looked at me for a long moment, something dangerous and possessive in his eyes. I'm going to remind Victor why people call me the ghost, and then I'm going to make sure he never threatens what's mine again. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. Boss, Marco's voice called. We have a problem. Dante crossed the room in 3 strides and opened the door. Marco stood there, his usual calm expression replaced with something close to alarm. Victor knows she's here. He just called, specifically mentioned the Lebanese waitress sleeping in your dead sister's room. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. How? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. We don't know, but boss, he's not asking for a meeting anymore. He's demanding one. Says if you don't show up in 2 hours, alone, he'll assume you're declaring war. Dante's hands clenched into fists. Tell him I'll be there. Boss, it's obviously a trap. I know it's a trap. Tell him anyway. Marco hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. Dante turned back to me, and I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. The weighing of options, the chess match playing out. You're going to meet him, I said. Yes. And if it's a trap? His lips curved into something cold and cruel. Then Victor will learn that ghosts are very hard to kill. He crossed back to me, cupping my face in both hands. Stay here. Don't leave this room. Marco will be outside your door, and there are 12 men patrolling the grounds. You're safe here. Dante. He kissed me, hard and possessive. I'll come back to you. I promise. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in his sister's room, wearing her clothes, watching through the window as he climbed into an SUV and drove toward whatever trap Victor Antonov had set. And I realized, with crystalline clarity, that somewhere in the past 36 hours, I'd stopped seeing Dante Marchetti as a dangerous stranger and started seeing him as someone I couldn't afford to lose. I lasted 20 minutes before I couldn't take it anymore. 20 minutes of pacing the bedroom, watching the clock, imagining all the ways Victor could kill Dante. 20 minutes of feeling helpless and caged while the man who'd somehow become essential to my survival walked into danger. 20 minutes before I decided to do something stupid. Marco was stationed outside my door, exactly as Dante had said. He looked up from his phone when I emerged, his expression polite but firm. Miss Hassan, Mr. Marchetti asked that you remain in your room. I need air. Just a walk around the grounds. I'm afraid I can't allow Marco. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. My entire life just burned down. I spent the night in a dead woman's bed, wearing her clothes, after sleeping with a man I barely know who may or may not be driving to his death right now. I need air. Something shifted in his expression. Sympathy, maybe, or understanding. 10 minutes. I come with you. And we stay within sight of the house. It was better than nothing. The grounds were beautiful in daylight manicured gardens, stone pathways, the vast lake stretching to the horizon. Armed men patrolled at regular intervals, their presence both comforting and terrifying. How long have you worked for him? I asked Marco as we walked. 10 years, since I was 22. Why? He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. My sister was sick, needed treatment we couldn't afford. Mr. Marchetti, he'd just taken over from his father, heard about it somehow, showed up at our apartment with a check for the full amount. Marco's voice softened, didn't ask for anything in return, just said nobody should watch family die because of money. That doesn't sound like a mob boss. Mr. Marchetti is complicated. He can be ruthless. I've seen him order men killed without hesitation. But he takes care of his people, protects them. Once you're his forever. Marco glanced at me. That's both a blessing and a curse. We'd reached a stone bench overlooking the lake. I sat, wrapping my arms around myself despite the warm sun. He's going to get himself killed trying to protect me, I said quietly. Maybe. Or maybe you're what he needs to stay alive. To remember why power matters not for its own sake, but for protecting the people you care about. I barely know him. Miss Hassan, I watched him last night after he got the call about your building. I've never seen him like that, truly afraid. And this morning, when he came downstairs and Victor's men delivered that box, Marco shook his head. The look in his eyes, that wasn't about business or territory. That was personal. My phone buzzed in my pocket, except I didn't have a phone. Mine had burned with everything else. Marco's hand went to his weapon. That's not yours. I pulled it out slowly. It was a basic burner phone, the kind you buy at convenience stores. A text message glowed on the screen from an unknown number. He's lying to you. Ask him what he really did the night you met. Ice flooded my veins. Marco, did Dante give me a phone? No. He moved closer, his entire body tense. Let me see that. I handed it over, watching his expression darken as he read the message. This is Victor's play. Psychological warfare. Whatever that message says, it's designed to make you doubt Mr. Marchetti, to create division. But how did they get a phone to me? I'm supposedly in the safest place in Chicago. Marco's jaw clenched. We have a leak. Another text came through. Check his phone records. The night you met at the restaurant, he called your manager. Offered him $10,000 to assign you to his table. My stomach dropped. It's a lie, Marco said immediately. Victor is playing you. Then it'll be easy to disprove. I met his eyes. Call Tony, my manager. Ask him if Dante paid him anything. Miss Hassan. Call him, right now. If it's a lie, we'll know Victor is just trying to manipulate me. If it's true, my voice cracked, then I need to know who I'm really dealing with. Marco looked torn, his loyalty to Dante warring with something else, maybe respect for me, or recognition that I deserved the truth. Finally, he pulled out his own phone and dialed. This is Marco, Mr. Marchetti's head of security. I need to ask you about a financial transaction. Pause. The night Miss Hassan worked the private booth, did anyone offer you money related to her assignment? Longer pause. I see. How much? His expression went carefully blank. And you didn't think to mention this because… Right. Thank you. He hung up. The silence stretched between us. How much? I whispered. 20,000. Not 10. Marco's voice was carefully neutral. Tony says a man came in that afternoon, before the dinner service. Described you perfectly, said Mr. Marchetti wanted you specifically as his server that night. Tony thought it was odd, but $20,000 is a lot of motivation to not ask questions. Another text. He orchestrated your meeting, researched you first. The spontaneous insult, the brave waitress standing up to the kingpin, it was all planned. You're not special. You're a mark. The phone shook in my hand. Miss Hassan, please don't listen to this. Victor is… Why would Dante do that? I stood, my mind racing. Why go through that elaborate setup? Why not just approach me normally? I don't know, Marco admitted. But there has to be an explanation. Does there? I laughed bitterly. Or is the explanation exactly what Victor is saying? That I'm a naive idiot who fell for a con? You're not naive. And Mr. Marchetti's feelings for you are real. I saw his face last night. Real feelings based on a manufactured meeting. I paced away from the bench, my hands shaking. God, I'm so stupid. The way he looked at me, like I was the first person to ever stand up to him, that was all part of it, wasn't it? He probably has a type. Lonely women with dead relatives who speak Arabic. Easy targets for whatever game he's playing. Miss Hassan, please, take me back inside. I need to think. Marco looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded. We walked back in silence, my mind spinning. By the time we reached my room, I'd received 3 more texts. He knew your grandmother's name before you told him. The fire wasn't Victor's men. It was his. To make you dependent on him. You're not the first. Ask about Isabella. Ask what happened to her. I slammed the door and leaned against it, my breath coming in short gasps. It couldn't be true. The emotion in Dante's eyes, the way he'd held me, the vulnerability when he talked about his sister that couldn't all be fake. Could it? I looked around the room with new eyes. His sister's room. A woman who'd died 5 years ago. How convenient that I was exactly her size, that her clothes fit perfectly. How convenient that this room was ready and waiting. How many other women had slept in this bed, wearing these clothes, believing they were special? Who was Isabella? The door burst open, and Dante strode in, his expression thunderous. He was covered in blood, not his own. I didn't think, but there was so much of it. Are you hurt? He demanded, crossing to me in 3 strides, his hands running over me, checking for injuries. I stepped back. Don't touch me. He froze. Layla, what? Did you pay my manager $20,000 to assign me to your table? His expression went carefully blank. Answer me, Dante. Did you orchestrate our meeting? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, yes. The confirmation felt like a physical blow. Why? Because I saw you. He ran a hand through his blood-matted hair. 3 weeks ago, at a coffee shop near campus, you were reading, completely absorbed in your book, and when the barista called your name, you answered in Arabic without thinking. You were… He broke off. You reminded me of someone. Your sister. He went very still. How did you… Victor's been texting me, telling me all about your manipulation, your lies, your plan. I held up the burner phone. How did this get past your security, Dante? How did Victor get a phone to me inside your supposedly impenetrable estate? His expression turned to stone. Show me. I tossed him the phone. He scrolled through the messages, his jaw clenching tighter with each one. Most of this is lies, he said finally, but not all of it. No. He looked at me, and I saw something raw and desperate in his eyes. Not all of it. I did see you before we officially met. I did arrange for you to be my server. I did. He broke off. I did want to meet you, and I knew you'd never agree to a date if I just walked up and introduced myself as Dante Marchetti. So you created a scenario where I'd insult you, where you could pretend to be intrigued by my bravery. Jesus Christ, Dante. Do you understand how fucked up that is? Yes. No defensive,ness, just flat acknowledgement. I understand exactly how fucked up it is. But Layla, everything after that, everything we've shared, that's been real. How can I possibly know that? How can I trust anything you say when our entire relationship is built on a lie? Because I'm telling you the truth now. His voice rose. Because I could let you believe Victor's version that you're just a mark, that I'm using you for some game. That would be easier, safer. But I won't lie to you anymore. Who's Isabella? The name hit him like a bullet. His face went white. Where did you hear that name? Victor mentioned her. Said I should ask about her. Said I'm not the first. Dante sat heavily on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were haunted. Isabella was my sister's best friend. They grew up together. After my sister died, Isabella, she tried to help me grieve, tried to be there for me. I thought, he broke off. I thought maybe I could care about someone again. Let someone in. We dated for 6 months. What happened? Victor happened. He found out about her, used her as leverage, kidnapped her and demanded I cede territory to get her back. His voice went flat. I got her back. But she'd been tortured. Broken. She looked at me like I was a monster for putting her in danger. And she was right. I sent her away with enough money to start over somewhere safe. Haven't seen her in 3 years. The pain in his voice was palpable, real. But was it real enough? So you learned your lesson about bringing innocent women into your world, I said. And yet here I am. Yes. He stood, moving toward me slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Here you are, and God help me, I couldn't stop myself. When I saw you in that coffee shop, so alive and fierce, and completely unaware of your own strength, I wanted that. Wanted you. So yes, I orchestrated our meeting. Yes, I manipulated circumstances to bring you into my orbit. He stopped just out of reach, his eyes locked on mine. But the fire. Layla, that was Victor. Every word he sent you about that was a lie. I would never hurt you to make you dependent on me. I would never. His voice cracked. You matter too much. I don't know what to believe. Then don't believe my words. Believe my actions. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, and held it up. On the screen was a photo of Maxim Volkov's lifeless body, dumped in an alley. I didn't know Victor sent this to me as a false apology. I thought he actually had Maxim killed. So I went to the meeting ready for war, ready to end this threat to you. He swiped to another photo, Viktor Antonov, unmistakably dead, his expensive suit soaked in blood. I killed him. Layla, the head of the Russian syndicate in Chicago. I started a war that will cost me millions to resolve, that will bring federal attention I can't afford, that will destabilize half my operations. His eyes blazed. I did it because he threatened you, because he made you doubt us, because he tried to take you away from me. My breath caught. Dante, so you want to know what's real? This is real. The blood on my hands is real. The war I just started is real. And the fact that I'd do it all again in a heartbeat if it meant keeping you safe, that's real too. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and cupped my face in his blood-stained hands. I'm not a good man, Layla. I've done terrible things. I'll do terrible things again. But what I feel for you, that's the most honest thing in my life. Tears burned behind my eyes. I don't know if I can trust you. Then let me earn it back. His thumbs brushed away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Stay with me. Let me prove that you're not a mark or a game or a replacement for my sister. Let me show you that what we have is real. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. But trust, once broken, doesn't heal cleanly. I need time, I whispered. I need space to think without you standing here looking at me like that. His expression cracked with pain, but he nodded. Okay, I'll give you space. But Layla, he pressed his forehead to mine. Please don't run. Please don't leave. Let me protect you while you figure out if you can forgive me. Why should I stay? Because despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the blood, you're safer with me than anywhere else in this city. Because Victor's men will be looking for revenge, and you're connected to me now whether we're together or not. His voice dropped. And because I think you feel this thing between us too. This pull that defies logic and safety and common sense. He was right. Damn him, he was right. I'll stay, I said. For now. But we're not. This isn't. I know. He kissed my forehead gently. Take all the time you need. He left, closing the door softly behind him. I stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by a dead woman's things, wearing her clothes, sleeping in her bed, and wondered which version of Dante Marchetti was real. The cold kingpin who orchestrated our meeting, or the broken man who just killed for me? And which version was more dangerous to my heart? 3 days passed in a strange limbo. I stayed in the room, my prison, my sanctuary. I couldn't decide which. Meals appeared outside my door at regular intervals, delivered by quiet staff who never tried to engage me in conversation. Marco checked on me twice a day, his expression carefully neutral, asking if I needed anything. I always said no. The burner phone stayed on the nightstand, silent now. No more texts from Victor because Victor was dead, killed by the man whose blood-stained hands had cupped my face so tenderly. I should have been horrified. Dante had killed someone. Multiple someones, probably, given the scope of his operation. He was everything my grandmother had taught me to avoid: violent, dangerous, morally compromised. But when I closed my eyes, I didn't see a monster. I saw the way he'd looked at me when he talked about his sister, the vulnerability when he'd confessed to orchestrating our meeting, the raw desperation when I'd asked for space. On the 4th day, I left the room. The house felt different now that I was exploring it voluntarily, rather than being led through it. I wandered through hallways lined with family portraits, generations of Marchetti men, all with the same sharp features and cold eyes. There was a photo of a young Dante with his arm around a girl who must have been his sister, both of them smiling at something outside the frame. He looked so young in the photo, so unburdened. I found the library on the 2nd floor, a massive room with leather furniture and floor-to-ceiling shelves. A fire crackled in the fireplace despite the warm weather outside. Dante stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at the lake. He didn't turn when I entered, but his shoulders tensed, telling me he knew I was there. "I thought you were giving me space," I said. "I am. This is my house. I'm bound to be somewhere in it." His voice was carefully neutral. "You're welcome to use the library. I can leave if..." "Don't." I moved closer, studying his profile. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, jaw shadowed with several days' stubble. "Have you slept?" "Not much." "Because of Victor?" "Because of you." The raw honesty in his voice made my breath catch. He finally turned to look at me, and I saw the cost of the past few days written in every line of his face. I keep replaying that conversation in my head, wondering if there's something I could have said differently. Some way to make you understand. He broke off. "But there isn't. Is there? Because what I did was wrong, and no amount of explanation changes that." I crossed to the window, standing beside him but not touching. Below, I could see Marco and other men patrolling, their presence a constant reminder of the danger lurking beyond these walls. "Why me?" I asked quietly. "Out of everyone in Chicago, why did I catch your attention?" He was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "Do you believe in ghosts, Layla?" The non-sequitur confused me. "What?" "After my sister died, this house felt haunted. Not literally, I don't believe in that. But everywhere I looked, I saw her. Her favorite chair, the piano she used to play, the gardens where she'd spend hours reading." He gestured to the grounds. "I was drowning in her absence, and nothing helped. Not work, not violence, not anything. And then you saw me, and then I saw you. In that coffee shop, reading like the entire world had disappeared. You looked so peaceful, so content in your own company." He turned to face me fully. "And when you answered in Arabic, without thinking for just a moment, I heard my sister's voice, the way she used to switch languages mid-sentence, not even realizing she was doing it. My heart ached. I'm not her. I know." His hand lifted like he wanted to touch me, then dropped. That's what I realized almost immediately. "You're not her. You're fiercer, more defiant. Where she was gentle, you're sharp. Where she was trusting, you question everything. A ghost of a smile. When you called me a coward, I knew then you were nothing like her. You were something entirely your own, but you still manipulated our meeting. Yes, because I'm a selfish bastard who wanted to know you, and I knew you'd never agree to it if you knew who I really was." He took a step closer. "I told myself I just wanted to meet you once, have one conversation with someone who reminded me what it felt like to be human. But then you stood there shaking and defiant and brave, and He broke off. "I wanted more. This isn't a romance novel, Dante. You can't just orchestrate a meet-cute and expect me to fall at your feet because you're charming and dangerous." "I know." His voice was rough. I know I'm asking for something I don't deserve. Forgiveness, trust, a chance to prove I can be better than my worst impulses. His eyes locked on mine. But I'm asking anyway, because the alternative, letting you walk away, never seeing you again, I can't survive that. You barely know me. I know you're brave enough to call a mob boss a coward. I know you speak 3 languages but still think in Arabic when you're nervous. I know you loved your grandmother so much that losing her things in the fire hurt worse than losing the building. I know you're lonely, but you'd rather be alone than settle for people who don't see you. He stepped closer. I know you kiss like you're afraid it might be the last time, and you sleep curled on your left side, and you take your tea with mint because that's how your grandmother made it. Tears burned behind my eyes. How do you? Because I pay attention. Because every moment with you matters. Because I'm desperately, dangerously obsessed with figuring out what makes you smile. This is insane. We've known each other less than a week. 5 days. He corrected. 5 days since you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. 5 days since I remembered what it feels like to care about something beyond territory and power. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I'm not good at this, he said quietly. Relationships, feelings, vulnerability, my father beat that out of me young. But for you, I want to try. I want to be the man you see when you look past the violence and blood, the man who deserves your forgiveness. I closed my eyes, fighting the war raging in my chest. Everything logical told me to run. He was dangerous. He'd lied to me. He'd killed people. But my heart, stupid, reckless organ wanted to stay. I can't promise I'll stay forever, I whispered. I can't promise I'll forgive everything. But, his voice was barely audible. But I can promise to try. To give you a chance to prove you're not just manipulating me again. The relief that flooded his expression was almost painful to witness. He pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me like he was afraid I might disappear. Thank you, he breathed into my hair. Thank you. I swear, Layla, I'll spend every day earning your trust back. Every day proving this is real. I let myself lean into him, let myself feel safe for just a moment. But even as I did, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered warnings. Because trust was fragile, and Dante Marchetti was a man who dealt in violence and lies. And no matter how much I wanted to believe in the gentleness of his touch, the reality of his world was waiting just outside these walls. A reality that was about to crash down on us harder than either of us expected. The explosion happened at dawn. I woke to the sound of shattering glass and Dante's arms around me, pulling me from the bed and onto the floor in one fluid motion. His body covered mine as debris rained down from the ceiling. "Stay down," he commanded, his voice sharp with command. Outside, gunfire erupted, rapid bursts of automatic weapons, the deeper boom of shotguns. Men shouted in Russian and Italian. "What's happening?" I gasped. "Victor's men. They want revenge." He was already moving, pulling me toward the bathroom, the room with no windows. "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marco." "Dante." He kissed me hard and fast. "I'll come back. I promise." Then he was gone, and I was alone in the bathroom, listening to the sounds of war unfolding throughout the estate. The bathroom had become my entire world. I sat in the massive marble tub empty, but it felt safer than being exposed, and listened to the chaos beyond the door. The gunfire had intensified, sometimes close enough that I could hear men shouting orders, sometimes distant enough that I could almost pretend this was happening somewhere else. Almost. My phone, the real one Dante had given me yesterday, buzzed. A text from him. "Still alive. Stay put. Love you. Love you." 2 words I hadn't expected. 2 words that changed everything. Another explosion rocked the house. This one farther away. The lights flickered but stayed on. I pulled my knees to my chest, making myself as small as possible, and tried not to think about all the ways this could end. Dante could die. I could die. We could both die in this bathroom while his empire crumbled around us. Time became meaningless. Minutes? Hours? I couldn't tell. The gunfire gradually decreased, replaced by shouting angry Italian, barked orders, the organized chaos of men regaining control. Then silence. Absolute, terrible silence. I stared at the bathroom door, barely breathing. Was it over? Had Dante won? Or was his body lying somewhere in this massive house, bleeding out while I hid like a coward? A knock on the door made me jump. "Miss Hassan, it's Marco. It's safe now." I didn't move. Victor's men could have captured Marco, could be using him to lure me out. Miss Hassan, I know you're scared, but it's really me. Mr. Marchetti sent me. Marco's voice cracked slightly. He's asking for you. That crack of emotion convinced me. I climbed out of the Rasnin tub on shaking legs and unlocked the door. Marco stood in the hallway, covered in soot and blood. His left arm hung at an odd angle, broken or dislocated, but his eyes were clear and his gun was holstered. Is he alive? But you need to come. Now. I followed him through the war zone that had been Dante's beautiful estate. Windows blown out, walls pockmarked with bullet holes, blood staining the marble floors. Bodies. I tried not to look too closely at the bodies. We went down to the first floor, then through a door I hadn't noticed before, downstairs into a basement I hadn't known existed. The basement was reinforced concrete, a bunker, I realized. A safe room designed to withstand attacks exactly like this. Dante sat in a chair in the center of the room, surrounded by his remaining men. His shirt was off, and a doctor, a woman with steady hands and a grim expression, was stitching up a long gash across his ribs. His eyes found mine the moment I entered, and relief flooded his face. Layla. I was across the room before I'd made the conscious decision to move, my hands on his face, checking him for injuries. Are you okay? How bad is it? What? I'm fine. He caught my hands, pressing a kiss to my palms despite the doctor's tisk of disapproval at his movement. Just a graze. Looks worse than it is. You were shot. Barely shot. Flesh wound. He winced as the doctor tugged another stitch. How are you? Did anyone get close to your room? No. I stayed in the bathroom like you said. I looked around at the dozen men in the room, all that remained of his security force. How many did we lose? The fact that I said we instead of you didn't escape notice. Marco's eyebrows rose. Dante's grip on my hands tightened. 7 dead. 3 critically injured. His voice was flat, controlled. Victor's second in command, Alexei, led the attack. 20 men. We killed 18 and captured 2. And Alexei? Something dark crossed Dante's face. Being questioned. Which meant being tortured. I should have felt sick. Instead, I felt relieved because these men had tried to kill Dante, and I discovered I was capable of terrifying ruthlessness when it came to protecting him. The doctor finished the last stitch and stepped back. You need rest. No strenuous activity for at least a week. And if that starts bleeding again, I know. Thank you, Teresa. He stood, testing his mobility, then looked at his men. Marco, coordinate cleanup and security. Double the perimeter guards until we know if this was their only play. Get our wounded to the hospital, use the private entrance. And someone call the councilman, we need the police to look the other way on this. His men dispersed, leaving us alone except for Teresa, who was packing up her medical supplies. You said you loved me, I blurted out. Dante froze. What? In your text. During the attack. You said, love you. My heart raced. Did you mean it? He crossed to me slowly, favoring his injured side. His hands cupped my face with infinite gentleness. Yes, he said simply. I meant it. I've probably meant it since you called me a coward in Arabic. I just didn't have the courage to say it before. That's insane. We barely know each other. I don't care. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I don't care if it's too fast or too intense or too dangerous. I don't care if I'm setting myself up for the worst pain of my life. I love you, Layla. And I'll keep loving you whether you stay or go. Tears burned behind my eyes. This is crazy. Your house was just attacked. People died. You were shot. This isn't the time for... It's the perfect time. He pressed his forehead to mine. Because I just faced the possibility of dying without ever telling you. And I won't make that mistake again. I kissed him, fierce and desperate and full of all the emotions I didn't have words for. When we broke apart, both of us breathing hard, he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Does this mean you're staying? I looked around the bunker, concrete walls, emergency supplies, the detritus of violence. Looked at Dante, bandaged and bleeding, and looking at me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I can live in a world where people try to kill us over breakfast, where violence is just part of the day, where you might not come back from the next fight. His expression cracked. I understand, but I don't know if I can live without you either. The admission felt like ripping open my chest. You're dangerous and manipulative, and you've killed people. You orchestrated our meeting. You dragged me into a war. You're everything I should run from. I know. And yet when I thought you might die up there, when I was sitting in that bathtub listening to gunfire. My voice broke. All I could think was that I needed you to survive, that I couldn't lose you, that despite everything, you'd become essential. Layla, so I don't know if I'm staying because it's right, or because I'm scared, or because I'm in love with you too. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I just know that right now, in this moment, I choose you. The kiss he gave me then was different from all the others. Softer, slower, full of promise and hope, and terrible, dangerous love. Right now is enough, he murmured against my lips. We'll figure out the rest together. Teresa cleared her throat. If you're done being romantic in my medical bay, I have actual patients to see to. We broke apart, both of us smiling despite the absurdity of finding joy in a bunker surrounded by the aftermath of violence. Dante took my hand, lacing our fingers together. Come on, let's get out of here. We climbed back up to the main floor, and I saw the true scope of the damage in daylight. Half the windows blown out, bullet holes everywhere, blood smeared across marble. I'll rebuild, Dante said, following my gaze. Make it stronger, safer, turn it into a fortress where nothing can touch us. Or, I said quietly, we could leave. Go somewhere Victor's men can't find us. Somewhere you're not a target. He looked at me like I'd suggested he sprout wings. Leave Chicago? Is that so crazy? You have money, resources, we could disappear, and leave my people? He shook his head. Layla, I can't. The families that depend on me for protection, the businesses I run, he broke off. This is who I am, the ghost of Chicago. I can't just walk away. Even if staying gets you killed? Even then, he pulled me closer. But I can make it safer, for you, for us. This attack, it showed me weaknesses in my security, things I need to fix. And once I do, once I've eliminated every threat, there will always be another threat. That's the nature of your world. Then I'll eliminate those too. His voice was steel. I'll burn down every organization in this city if it means keeping you safe. I looked up at him, this dangerous, powerful man who'd somehow become mine, and realized that was both the most romantic and most terrifying thing he could have said, because he meant it. He would burn the world for me. The question was, could I live with the ashes? 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in Dante's newly reinforced master suite, wearing a dress I didn't recognize. It was beautiful midnight blue silk that hugged my curves and made my skin glow. The price tag had probably fed a small country. It hung in the closet alongside dozens of other designer pieces, all purchased for me by a man who'd declared war on half of Chicago's criminal underworld to keep me safe. Tonight was the gala, some ridiculous charity event for children's hospitals, attended by politicians and socialites and criminals pretending to be legitimate businessmen. Dante had been invited, commanded to attend, really, by people powerful enough that even he couldn't refuse. And I was going as his date, his public declaration that I mattered, that I was under his protection, that anyone who wanted to hurt him would have to go through me first. You look beautiful. I turned to find Dante in the doorway, devastating in a black tuxedo that had probably been tailored specifically for his body. His ribs had healed, though I knew he still favored that side slightly. The doctor had been right, it was just a flesh wound. But the scars on his psyche from the attack ran deeper. He'd thrown himself into fortifying the estate with an intensity that bordered on obsession. New security systems, more guards, reinforced windows that could withstand small explosives. He'd turned his home into a fortress, and himself into an even more ruthless version of the man I'd met. But when he looked at me, some of that cold mask fell away, revealing the human underneath. You clean up nice yourself, I said, adjusting his bow tie. Ready to pretend we're normal people for a few hours? I'm never normal, but with you, I can pretend. He caught my hands, his expression turning serious. You don't have to do this. I can go alone. You'd be safer here. I'm going. I'd made this decision days ago, after watching him reorganize his entire operation to minimize risk to me. We're in this together, remember? Together, he echoed, like the word was a prayer. The drive to the hotel where the gala was held felt surreal. Marco drove, with 2 additional SUVs full of security flanking us. Dante held my hand the entire time, his thumb tracing absent patterns on my skin. I've never brought anyone to one of these events, he said quietly. Never wanted to. Too much exposure, too dangerous. So why now? Because hiding you doesn't make you safer, it just makes you invisible. And I want everyone in this city to know you're mine. You're protected. Touch you. And they answer to me. Possessive and problematic and somehow still romantic. That was Dante in a nutshell. The hotel ballroom was stunning, crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, a orchestra playing in the corner. The city's elite milled about in designer clothes and fake smiles, making small talk that meant nothing, and deals that meant everything. Dante's entrance caused a ripple. Conversations paused, people turned to look. And when they saw me on his arm, the whispers started. Is that... never brings anyone. Who is she? Heard his estate was attacked. Dante's hand tightened on mine. Ignore them. Hard to ignore when they're staring. They're jealous. You're the most beautiful woman in this room. And everyone knows it. I laughed despite my nerves. You're biased. Absolutely. He steered me toward the bar. Drink? Something strong. While he ordered, I scanned the crowd. Politicians I recognized from news coverage. Businessmen whose companies probably fronted for illegal operations. Socialites who lunched and gossiped and wielded their own kind of power. And there, across the room, watching us with cold calculation, a man I didn't recognize but who made every instinct scream danger. Dante, I murmured. Who's that? He followed my gaze, and his entire body went rigid. Fuck. What? Who is he? Antonio Ricci, head of the Italian syndicate from New York. His voice was carefully controlled. He's been trying to expand into Chicago for years. I've been blocking him. And he's here because Victor's dead, which leaves a power vacuum. And because he knows I was weakened by the attack on my estate. Dante's hand slid to my lower back, possessive and protective. He's here to make a move. Before I could respond, Antonio Ricci crossed the room with the confidence of a man used to getting what he wanted. He was older than Dante, maybe 50, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Marchetti, he said smoothly, Italian accent thick. What a surprise to see you here. I'd heard your estate was in ruins. Rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated. Dante's voice was ice. Ricci, I don't remember seeing your name on the guest list. A last-minute addition. The councilman was kind enough to include me. His gaze slid to me, assessing. And who is this lovely creature? None of your concern. Come now, Marchetti. Are we not colleagues? Surely you can introduce me to your companion. The tension between them was thick enough to cut. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to step back, to make myself small and invisible. Instead, I extended my hand. Layla Hassan, pleased to meet you. Antonio took my hand, bending over it in an old-fashioned gesture. His lips brushed my knuckles, and I felt Dante's rage like a physical thing beside me. The pleasure is all mine, Miss Hassan. Antonio straightened, still holding my hand. Tell me, how does a beautiful woman such as yourself end up with a dangerous man like Marchetti? Carefully, I said, extracting my hand. And with eyes wide open, his smile widened, intelligent as well as beautiful. You have excellent taste, Marchetti. I'll give you that. Was there something you wanted, Ricci? Or did you come over just to waste my time? Actually, yes. I wanted to make you an offer. Antonio's expression turned predatory. Victor's territory is up for grabs. Rather than fight over it, which would be expensive and bloody for both of us, why don't we split it? You take the north, I take the south. We maintain our respective operations and avoid unnecessary conflict. No. No? Antonio's eyebrows rose. Just like that? You don't even want to discuss terms? There's nothing to discuss. Chicago is mine. All of it. If you want territory, go back to New York. I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, I've already made commitments to certain people. Promises that depend on Chicago expansion. His gaze flickered to me again. It would be unfortunate if I couldn't fulfill those promises. The threat was clear. Refuse, and people, possibly including me, would pay the price. Dante stepped slightly in front of me, blocking Antonio's view. Let me be very clear, Ricci. You're not expanding into Chicago. You're not taking Victor's territory. You're not making deals with my politicians or bribing my judges. And if you threaten what's mine again... What? You'll kill me? Here, in front of all these witnesses? Antonio laughed. You're not that stupid, Marchetti. You're not the ghost anymore, you're a man with weaknesses. With things to lose. His eyes cut to me. That makes you vulnerable. Everything happened very fast. Dante's fist connected with Antonio's jaw with a crack that echoed through the ballroom. Antonio stumbled back, blood spurting from his split lip. His men, I hadn't noticed them before. But they were there, surged forward. So did Dante's. Within seconds, The elegant gala had turned into a standoff. Two groups of armed men facing each other while civilians screamed and ran for the exits. "Dante, stop!" I grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back. He shook me off gently but firmly, his eyes never leaving Antonio. "This is what you wanted, isn't it, Ricci? To provoke me in public, to make me look unstable, to convince the other families that I'm losing control." Antonio dabbed at his bloody lip with a handkerchief, his expression triumphant despite the violence. I wanted to see if the rumors were true, if the ghost had finally found his weakness. His gaze locked on me. "Looks like they were right." Dante pulled his gun. The movement was smooth, practiced, deadly. He pressed the barrel to Antonio's forehead before anyone could react. "Here's what's going to happen," Dante said, his voice conversational despite the weapon in his hand. "You're going to leave Chicago, tonight. You're going to tell everyone you met with me and we had a productive discussion about territorial boundaries. You're going to smile and shake hands and pretend this never happened. And if I refuse, then I pull this trigger, and your men pull theirs, and we all die in a very expensive hotel ballroom, which would be unfortunate, but I'm prepared for that outcome. Are you?" For a long moment, nobody moved. The orchestra had stopped playing. The few remaining civilians huddled against the walls, recording on their phones. This was going to be all over the news by morning. Finally, Antonio smiled a cold, calculating expression. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk her life." He gestured to me, and I realized with crystal clarity that this had been his plan all along. Force Dante into an impossible choice shoot and start a war that might kill me in the crossfire, or back down and prove he'd been weakened by love. "You're right," Dante said softly. "I wouldn't risk her life, which is why I made sure she was safe before I came here tonight." He glanced at me, and I saw the apology in his eyes a split second before Marco's arms wrapped around me from behind, pulling me backward toward the exit. "No," I struggled, but Marco was too strong. "Dante, don't. Get her out of here," Dante commanded, his gun still pressed to Antonio's head. "Now." Marco dragged me through the emergency exit despite my protests. The last thing I saw before the door closed was Dante, standing alone against Antonio Ricci and his men, willing to die to prove that loving me hadn't made him weak. It had made him stronger. The waiting was the worst part. Marco had driven me back to the estate at speeds that should have been illegal, installed me in the newly reinforced safe room, and then disappeared back into the night, presumably to help Dante, presumably to fight whatever war had erupted at that gala. I sat on the concrete floor of the bunker, my beautiful dress filthy and torn, and waited. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in this windowless room. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your boyfriend chose poorly. Check the news." With shaking hands, I pulled up a news website. The headline made my blood run cold. "Shootout at charity gala. Multiple casualties. Mob boss Dante Marchetti presumed dead." No. No. I clicked the article with numb fingers. A violent confrontation at the St. Regis Hotel's annual charity gala left 7 dead and 12 injured tonight. Sources confirm that Chicago crime boss Dante Marchetti engaged in an armed standoff with New York syndicate head Antonio Ricci. When police arrived, they found multiple bodies but no sign of Marchetti. Authorities are treating this as a homicide investigation. Marchetti is wanted for questioning. The phone fell from my hands. He was dead. Dante was dead. The man I loved. The man who'd killed for me. The man who'd promised to come back. The bunker door opened. I looked up, expecting Marco, expecting bad news, expecting my world to end. Instead, Dante walked through the door. He was covered in blood, so much blood, and his tuxedo was ruined. But he was alive. He was here. I launched myself at him, not caring about the blood, not caring about anything except the fact that he was real and solid and breathing. "You're alive," I sobbed into his chest. "You're alive," the news said. "Shh." His arms wrapped around me tight and secure. "I'm okay. I'm here." "The news said you were dead," they said. "The news is reporting what I wanted them to report." He pulled back enough to look at me, his hands cupping my face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for scaring you. But it had to look real. Had to convince Antonio and anyone else thinking about challenging me that the ghost really had died." "I don't understand." He led me to one of the chairs, sitting down and pulling me onto his lap like he couldn't bear to stop touching me. "After you left, Antonio made his move. His men drew weapons. Mine drew weapons. It should have been a bloodbath. But I'd planned for this. Had Marco plant explosives throughout the hotel's electrical system. When I gave the signal, the lights went out. In the chaos, my men evacuated everyone, including Antonio's men who'd been bribed to work for me. When the lights came back on, the bodies, I whispered. Volunteers from the morgue. Already dead. Dressed to look like my men and Antonio's. Staged to look like we'd all killed each other. His expression was grim. By the time the police arrived, we were gone. All of us. Antonio's on a plane back to New York right now, convinced I'm dead. The other families think I'm dead. Even the FBI thinks I'm dead. So what happens now? His hands tightened on my waist. Now, I disappear. Dante Marchetti dies in that hotel ballroom. And someone else, someone with a different name and a clean slate, lives on. The implications hit me. You're leaving Chicago. We're leaving Chicago, he corrected. If you'll come with me. I stared at him, my mind reeling. You'd give up everything? Your empire, your power, your name? In a heartbeat. His eyes were fierce. Layla, these past few weeks with you have shown me something I never understood before. Power is meaningless without someone to share it with. Territory is just dirt. Money is just paper. But you, his voice cracked, you're everything. Where would we even go? Anywhere you want. I have accounts all over the world, properties in places Victor and Antonio and everyone else will never think to look. We could disappear to Greece, Argentina, Japan, anywhere. Start over. Build something new. And your people? The families who depend on you? Marco will take over. I've been training him for years. He's smart, ruthless when he needs to be, and loyal to the core. Chicago will be in good hands. I looked at this man, this dangerous, powerful man who'd faked his own death rather than risk my life in a gang war, and realized he was offering me everything. A future, freedom. A chance to be something other than the ghost's weakness. I have one condition, I said. Anything. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more orchestrating our life together. From this moment forward, we're equals. We make decisions together. You don't protect me by keeping me in the dark. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that made him look young and unburdened. Deal. No more lies. No more secrets. Just us, figuring this out together. Even if I make bad decisions? Especially then. He kissed me softly. I'll be there to help you fix them. I laughed, the sound edged with hysteria and relief and overwhelming love. This is insane. Completely insane. He agreed. But that seems to be our specialty. Where do we go first? He pulled out his phone, a burner probably, and showed me images of a villa on a Greek island. White stone, blue shutters, surrounded by olive trees and overlooking the sea. It's been in my family for generations. No one knows about it except me. We could stay there while we figure out next steps. Plant a garden, learn to cook, pretend to be normal people who fell in love the normal way. We'll never be normal. No, he admitted. But we can try. I looked at the villa, imagining myself there. Imagining mornings with Dante, nights under Greek stars, a life unburdened by violence and danger and death. It should have felt impossible, a fantasy, a beautiful lie. Instead, it felt like coming home. Okay, I said. Let's disappear. His smile could have powered the sun. He kissed me again, deeper this time, full of promise and hope, and desperate, dangerous love. When do we leave? I asked against his lips. Now. Tonight. Before anyone realizes I'm not actually dead. I don't have anything. No clothes, no possessions. We'll buy new ones. Start fresh. Be whoever we want to be. I thought of my grandmother, who'd fled Lebanon with nothing but the clothes on her back and a copper kettle, who'd built a new life in a foreign country through sheer determination, who'd taught me that home wasn't a place it was, the people you loved. She would have liked you, I said softly. My grandmother. She would have said you were trouble. Would she have been wrong? No, I smiled. But she also would have said, the best things in life are usually trouble. 3 hours later, we were on a private plane headed to Greece. I sat by the window, watching Chicago disappear beneath us, the city where I'd been born, where I'd lost everything, where I'd found something far more valuable than safety. Dante sat beside me, his hand in mine, his thumb tracing those familiar circles on my skin. Regrets? He asked. I thought about my apartment burning, my grandmother's things lost to ash, The ordinary life I'd lived before a dangerous man walked into a restaurant and changed everything. No, I said honestly. No regrets. You? He lifted my hand to his lips, kissing each knuckle with reverent care. My only regret is not meeting you sooner, not having more time with you. We have all the time in the world now, and I plan to use every second of it loving you. The sun was rising over the Atlantic as we flew east, toward a new life and a new name and a future we'd build together. Somewhere far below, the news was reporting the death of Dante Marchetti, the ghost of Chicago, killed in a violent shootout with rival mobsters. They'd analyze his life, his crimes, his ruthless rise to power. They'd never know the truth, that the ghost had found something more powerful than fear, or territory, or control. He'd found love, and love had set him free. 5 years later, I stood in the garden of our villa, harvesting tomatoes in the warm Greek sun. My hands were dirty, my hair pulled back in a messy bun, and I'd never been happier. "Mama!" A small voice called from the house. "Papa says lunch is ready." I smiled, wiping my hands on my jeans. Our daughter, 3 years old, with her father's dark eyes and my stubborn chin, came running across the lawn, all wild curls and boundless energy. Dante appeared in parody, the doorway, an apron tied around his waist, looking nothing like the cold kingpin who'd once ruled Chicago with an iron fist. He looked like a man who'd finally found peace. "Tomatoes for lunch?" he called. "The best ones." I called back. Our daughter grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the house. "Papa made pasta," with the sauce Grandmama taught him. I caught Dante's eye over her head, and the look he gave me was worth every dangerous moment, every terrifying night, every impossible choice. We'd built this, together, a life far from violence and death, a family born from ashes, a love that had survived manipulation and lies and war to become something real and lasting. We were no longer the ghost and the waitress. We were just us, and that was more than enough.